Great to see you.
Thanks very much, Mark, and welcome to all of you. We've got a great turnout today, and I'm really excited what we can talk about today and our progress in the Sentinel Initiative. Now, I won't probably be able to talk as fast as Mark, but hopefully I will be able to keep on my time. As Mark said, this is the 5th annual public meeting since the Sentinel Initiative was launched in 2008, and we've really accomplished a lot. At the beginning, of course, you know, it was an experiment, and so we weren't really sure that we were going to be able to pull this off and get this program together. But I think we can conclude now, after 5 years of work on this, that this effort, once it reaches its full potential, really can revolutionize safety surveillance. I think we have found a method that's really going to be able to help us significantly in the future. Through our Sentinel pilot, Mini Sentinel, we're already able to obtain rapid responses to FDA questions about the safety of medical products we regulate. And we can do that not necessarily in real time, but very quickly when we have questions. For those of you who may be interested, to date we've performed over 307 queries related to the products that we regulate. So we can also do production scale inquiries rather than having to do sort of one epidemiologic study at a time. And hopefully as we grow this system, this will become even more robust and efficient. The information we get from this Sentinel system is used to complement other data FDA has to help us inform regulatory decision making. So as we've emphasized all along, this is not a tool that's just going to give us answers. We will get additional information that we put with all the other information we have to help us make decisions. And because our goal is to monitor the safety of regulated medical products throughout their entire life cycle, it's critical we continue to gather safety data from a variety of sources once the product moves into clinical use. And as you know, and as we discuss every day at CEDAR, at least, probably at CBER as well, the way these products are used once they're out on the market is not the way they were studied often, or has many additional ramifications compared to the original clinical trial, and the outcomes may be quite different, including the safety outcomes. So really you could say we never have really enough data when it comes to safety and protecting the public health. We're always operating in a realm of some uncertainty. The goal of Mini Sentinel and other safety efforts that we have is to decrease that uncertainty, to improve our certainty, to make our probabilities more robust. There are always major questions about when we have enough data, in fact, to make a regulatory decision, because we always have that uncertainty factor. And we have learned, I think, through Mini Sentinel, we've learned more about how to assemble a data package that you might say is good enough to make that regulatory decision. We will never, though, have a complete picture. There are always going to be limitations. But I think this program is on the right track to give us real-time feedback from use in healthcare that makes us really more confident about what's happening out there. And because we really need to make rapid decisions sometimes when a signal arises, because people may be at risk for injury out there. But traditionally we've been operating in sort of a fog of uncertainty after we have a signal, often for a number of years after that signal arises. So we may get spontaneous reports of an adverse event, or we may hear a hint from a clinical trial, and yet we really don't know whether there's a relationship or not. And the public is very unhappy that we have to undergo this long period of trying to figure this out, all right? So this approach, using real-time health data and looking at what actually happens out there in the future, hopefully will give us much more rapid cycle time from signal reception to doing further analyses and so forth. So today we're going to hear about some of the projects that are underway, and I think the agenda will give much more specificity to the kind of things that we can do now. But what I'd like to do is spend some time discussing thoughts on the future of Sentinel Initiative. Where do we go from here? Now, the slide that was up before, if we can put that up again, it was entitled Sentinel Initiative Timeline Proposed, okay? It was the one with the blocks on it. Somebody was sort of there. No? That one. Excellent. Okay. Now, this isn't what Mark showed you in the timeline is what we've done, okay, up till now, culminating with this meeting. But the question remains, like, what are we going to do in the future? Okay, how are we going to put this together further? Now, as you can see, in 2009, we awarded a contract for Mini Sentinel. That's how Mini Sentinel was instantiated. And this contract has been key in helping us to how best to implement safety surveillance. And as you'll hear soon, we've been able to test this by running safety evaluations on real safety issues. So we now have the ability to query the electronic healthcare data of our data partners while the data, as Mark emphasized, remains in their existing secure environments. So we can query the data that resides there and get back the conclusions. We're working with world-class experts to develop and refine the methodologies for using observational healthcare data to support safety surveillance, to provide us with a better understanding. The methods that we currently use have limitations, of course. All observational data has limitations. And the methods are basically intended to figure out ways around these limitations and get more certainty about causal inference. And the OMOP initiative and also within Mini Sentinel, we've been doing methodologic work to try and refine these methods. However, our Mini Sentinel contract will expire in the fall of 2014. And although to perhaps some of you this seems far away, for a federal employee who has to deal with the federal system, it's panic-inducing, okay? We've already started thinking about how to move from Mini Sentinel to a sustained active surveillance capacity. Okay, and what would that look like? And that's kind of what this diagram is alluding to. As we've explained at past Sentinel public workshops, we believe, and I certainly believe, we need to create a data infrastructure that can be used not only by FDA, but also by others interested in using electronic healthcare data for research. And essentially, we're proposing creating the data infrastructure of Mini Sentinel as a national resource that could be used for multiple purposes, all right? And not only would that make sure these data were being put to their maximal utility, all right, but it would also share the resource burden amongst various parties who are interested in having access to these data and would like to do research or answer questions using the data. The first step to creating such an infrastructure is to involve all stakeholders in involving a national resource. So thank you again for coming today. We feel we have to build on the success of Mini Sentinel, such as the strong privacy protections that have been established and the practice of keeping data within their existing environments with the parties that know the data best, understand the data structure, and are best able to ensure the security and privacy of those data. And through such a joint collaborative effort, then, we think we can create an efficient means of using electronic healthcare data to inform both healthcare and regulatory decisions. In other words, research about healthcare, quality information about healthcare, and so forth, as well as the safety information that FDA would use in making regulatory decisions. We, FDA, are committed to initiating such an ambitious program, and we envision, what we're currently envisioning is a 5-year cooperative agreement that would support the development of a distributed data infrastructure and the creation of a governance and sustainability approach to ensure the development and success of this vital national resource. So what do I mean by that? So that piece, the data infrastructure, we're talking about separately from the query structure, the coordinating center, or whatever you want to call it, that asks any specific questions using this data infrastructure. We're saying the data infrastructure itself is the resource, and that could be developed as a standalone resource with some partners, hopefully multiple partners, using a cooperative agreement with the FDA. We envision that our partner in the cooperative agreement would engage with a broad group of stakeholders. So this would be a collective initiative. And the goal would be to design a program that would allow the creation of various operations centers that could serve specific purposes and users. And each one of those would have its own governance alignment with the governance of the data infrastructure. So, for example, to be more concrete, for example, if you wanted to study quality, for example, you could have a consortium that access these data for those purposes, and that would have different governance than the kind of governance you would use for studying safety signals, say, from the FDA. Similarly, there are many other types of research and questions that people have that various parties may want to access such a research infrastructure. So, ensuring other stakeholders' independent access to this national data resource would not only directly serve the public, but also contribute to the sustainability of the overall program, because those stakeholders would have an incentive to provide support, both financial support, intellectual support, and otherwise, to the maintenance of the infrastructure. So in other words, we would like to build a community of people who are committed to having this data infrastructure available and to its continuation. Through another contract, and that's another piece on here, FDA expects to create its own operations center, all right? And this we call it the Sentinel Operations Center, would be for exclusive FDA use for medical product safety surveillance. So that's how we're using the system right now. We have both the Operations Center and the data infrastructure in one contract under Mini Sentinel, okay? This is important because although there are areas that are best served through collaboration, with some areas where FDA has to maintain its regulatory authority and to be able to rapidly access these signals and to deal with them in a regulatory fashion. So this would be our main interest, we envision, would be answering, dealing with safety problems. So assuming the national resource is successfully created, our hope would be then, as I already said, that other operations centers would be established, allowing access to this national resource by other users. In other words, other government agencies, researchers from academia or industry, and so forth, for various purposes, such as medical product research, public health surveillance, and so forth. And this would provide maximal value to the broad public health initiative, that would be served by creating this national infrastructure. In addition, we believe it's essential to continue to develop and refine the existing methodologic approaches to evaluating the data we access through the system. And I alluded to this earlier. Our tools we have all this data that we've created, but our tools to analyze these data still require substantial improvement. And this is a very complicated, math-intensive type of activity that has to be carried out by experts. And we need to, and the funding for this type of activity has been really quite small over the years. But now that we have the access to these large databases that will be created and have been created, we really need to ensure that there's adequate funding so that we can get robust methods, that we understand their performance characteristics and we understand the extent that we can rely on the results. In other words, how much weight can we put on the results? And right now, I would say, we don't know, at least speaking for myself, we don't know how much weight we can put on a given result. So here too, therefore, we envision a cooperative agreement to support this work. And the reason for that is very similar. It is that many parties have a stake in getting this right, all right, across academia, across actually the data holders themselves, okay, because as these methods are used to make conclusions and drive decisions on how healthcare is done and so forth, they have to be reliable and robust. So we would envision that we would develop a research collaborative, and that would be the third piece of this. So we'd have FDA's Operations Center, the national resource that would contain the data infrastructure, set up under a collaborative agreement, and then a methodologic research program, sustainable and funded, that is set up under collaborative agreement as well, cooperative agreement as well. So those are the plans. These are basically our early proposals, our early plans. Obviously, they'll continue to be refined as we move toward our transition. We wanted to share them with those of you who have been so supportive in achieving the tremendous progress to date and have braved the weather in showing up at this meeting today. We are very open to feedback and people's comments and opinions and suggestions on how we should refine these proposals in moving forward. We particularly recognize that those who represent data partners, those healthcare systems and others who actually have these data, have a big stake in how this plays out over the next several years. And we're particularly interested in talking to all of you. So, in summary, I'd like to say together we've really made substantial progress with this initiative, much more than we expected, right? It's really a big success, and it's paramount, I think, that we continue our investment in its development to realize its full potential, to enable us to have that dream of harnessing the healthcare data, especially as it evolves into electronic medical records data, and really use it for the public good in so many ways. So this is our proposal moving forward. I think the day will help really fill out the picture, and you'll understand what has been accomplished and the promise of this going forward. And I look forward to collaborating with all of you. Thank you very much.